I'm Simon. What follows are the first 3 chapters of my science fiction novel, The Flaxen Tyranny, narrated by me. I'll be uploading the full story here. If this resonates with you, you're welcome to subscribe. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 1. Suffering. Cyrilda turned, unprepared for the fist that struck her face, sending her flying to the stony ground. The water from the buckets she had just filled splashed over her as her hands involuntarily released them from her grasp. Her shoulder, absorbing most of the impact, screamed with pain. The images that filled her mind of the impossible ship that travelled the stars immediately vanished as she looked up at the man who had assailed her, his dark grey uniform glistening in the winter sun. He looked down at the girl he had assaulted. "You are a disgusting bitch. You walk around this camp as if you were better than the other Zunes. What do you think you're doing out of your hut at this hour?" Cyrilda, shaking on the floor, attempted to meet the yellow eyes that pierced her. "We need water, Major. Half of the people in my hut are dehydrated." "Do you expect me to care about you or the other vermin that inhabit your hut? Or any other hut for that matter?" Cyrilda's hands shook violently as she stayed on the ground. "No, Major." "Then why do you stroll around this place as if it were your own palace? Do you think because you're a half-breed bitch that I will treat you better? Perhaps you think because your father was Flaxen, you deserve better treatment." Before Cyrilda could respond, he kicked her in the torso. She coughed and gasped as the strike left her lungs absent of air. She tried to control her breathing, each breath causing pain, as another man's voice could be heard from across the courtyard. "Major, what's going on here?" Cyrilda watched as the Major turned. She knew the voice instantly. It usually grated through her body like a dull knife, but for the first time, she was happy to hear it. It was the Colonel, head of Camp Skadi. He looked at the Major, his yellow eyes cold, his demeanour authoritative. "Why did you strike this girl?" The Major bowed his head, a required display of subordination in the Flaxen military. "Colonel, I have seen too many displays of defiance from this half-breed. We need to discipline the Zunes." The Colonel looked down at his subordinate. Although Major Damien Scenery was over 7 feet tall, the Colonel was taller than even he. And for what infraction was this discipline necessary? Cyrilda saw the Major trying to hide his look of revulsion. The sun is setting, and yet she finds it acceptable to collect water. This is a clear breach of the rules imposed on these vermin, Colonel. The Colonel retained eye contact. "I believe, since the mines are currently closed, the Zunes are free to roam within the perimeter of the camp until the sun has set?" Damien looked to the sky. "But it is nearly set, Colonel. There is perhaps 10 minutes of daylight left." "But it has not yet, so the girl has breached no rules." Cyrilda kept her gaze fixed on the Major. She could see the disgust on his face. The Colonel had no longer been showing proper discipline to the subhumans that infested Earth, and she knew exactly why, though the Major clearly did not. Even in her perilous situation, this amused her. "But Colonel, this bitch has been nothing but trouble. She needs to understand the consequences of defiance." The Colonel pulled his pistol from his waist and aimed it directly at the Major's face. "This is beginning to sound like insubordination to me. You know as well as I do, I can pull this trigger. Anyone of the rank of Colonel or above can execute those of inferior ranks summarily. The judgment of the crime is mine to determine. Is that what you wish, Major?" The Major bowed his head again. "No, sir. I apologise if I have overstepped my authority." "Then you are on latrine duty for the next week. Am I understood?" The Major briefly looked at the girl he had assaulted before returning his gaze to his superior. "Colonel Flint, this is an indignity that cannot be tolerated. Latrine duty is for the Zunes." The Colonel pulled back the cock on his pistol. "And yet these are my orders. Obey me now, or die." "Yes, sir. I understand. Good. Then leave now before I change my mind. The Major raised his fist into the air. For Flaxus. For Flaxus. Now leave my sight. I suggest you start cleaning shit immediately if you value your life. The Major walked away, saying nothing more. Colonel Jacoba Flint turned his gaze to the half-breed on the floor. He extended his hand to assist her. Cyrilda pretended not to notice his gesture and raised herself with both arms. Her shoulder hurt, but she at least now knew it was no serious injury. My apologies, Cyrilda. I expect better of my men. She hated it when this vile creature used her first name. It was given to her by her mother. A woman of such kindness and love, she cried for her memory each night. To hear it sullied by this towering monster before her caused such fury within her, she usually needed every fibre of her strength not to spit in his face. Although the salvation brought upon her from this man she despised, somewhat diminished her desire to do so. She raised her head to meet his eyes. No problem, Colonel. It was just a misunderstanding. She forced a smile and turned to walk away, leaving her bucket behind. Jacoba grabbed her by the wrist when she turned. He caressed her arm as he looked her in the eye once more. I'll be seeing you tonight, of course. At the usual time? Her forced smile widened. Of course, Colonel Flint. He released her, and she walked slowly back to her hut. Several hours later, she returned to the trough of stagnant water, her surreptitious reconnaissance having confirmed no yellow-skinned menaces lurked within its vicinity. She filled 2 buckets and hurried back to Hut 7, a name she considered inadequate to describe the suffering within its thin metal walls. As she entered, she placed 1 bucket next to a group of prisoners in a stack of bunks near the door. 2 or 3 slept in each, although they were barely big enough to accommodate a woman of average stature. These people were the most infirm and riddled with disease. The other inhabitants had debated amongst each other and concluded they must be segregated, lest their disease infect them all. Not even Cyrilda objected to this. Although she had inherited her mother's compassion and value for all life, she was also the product of her father, and from him she had been passed pragmatism and a strong desire to survive. She no longer noticed the stench that permeated the air like an invisible fog. When she first arrived, all those years ago, it would keep her awake at night. She had imagined that if it had a colour, it would be a deep brown-green that infested all it touched. Harder to ignore were the cries and moaning. They filled the air with a viscosity equal to the smell and equally perennial. She hurried to her friend at the other side of the hut. Megan was purely human, and Cyrilda envied her for this. The persecution she had endured from some of the inmates for her heritage paled in comparison to the chastisement she inflicted on herself each day. After all, half flaxen meant full flaxen amongst some of the less enlightened within the place of suffering they all inhabited. She forced the retribution she had encountered from her mind as she attended to her friend. She lifted her friend's head onto her lap and forced her to drink 3 cups of water. It spilled down her chin as her head shook from the effort. Look what I have, Megan. It's dried meat. Beef, I think. I got it from the Colonel last night. There's enough here for both of us. Megan looked at the food, then once more at her friend's face, her eyes wide with shock. Oh, Cyrilda, that bruise on your face. Was it that bastard again? When I'm better, I swear to God I will kill him, and I will gladly burn in damnation for the pleasure. Don't worry about that, my love. You know how quickly I heal. Now, how about some of this beef? The half-flaxen broke off a piece of the brown meat and put it to Megan's mouth. Her friend refused to eat. Her voice was soft and weak, but it had a musical quality that Cyrilda had always loved. I need to know. Are we still safe? Will the red circles still not glow? Are they safe? She gestured to the sickly prisoners at the other end of the hut. Serilda couldn't contain her tears, not only for the compassion displayed by her friend, but for the need for her to have to say such a thing in the first place. She thought about the place called Hell that Megan often talked about. She wondered if its misery could compete with Camp Skaddy. She wiped her eyes with the cloth that had wrapped their food. She had, for a moment, tuned out the crying and moaning of the people who endured eternal suffering around her. Yes, Megan, I promise. As long as I'm here, the circles won't glow. I have him under control. Now eat. Please, will you eat? Megan smiled as her deep brown eyes shone brighter than before. Her soft, sweet voice filled the small hut like a harp. You were sent by God, Serilda, and I will spend my days asking him why he sent you to me. Serilda held Megan in her arms as she waited for her to sleep. Then she thought of the strange ship and the man that commanded it that seemed to travel the stars. These obscure images had infiltrated her dreams for over a week. She knew change was coming, and the nature of that change eluded her, for it may not be the solace she hoped it would be. She had never believed, but for the first time, she prayed to Megan's God that it would reach them before the red circles did. Chapter 2. Copious Time. Captain Steve Thomas gazed upon the beams from the distant sun that glistened on his diamond window, as the voices of his two officers passed over him like they were no more than echoes from conversations long past. He worried his subordinates would see the sweat mount on his brow as he was unable to keep his attention on the room around him, his private office, adjacent the bridge of the United Earth starship Formidable. All he could think about was the war, the carnage of the 6 long years, and most of all, the battle with Odin. The Martian flagship had been of equal strength to Formidable, perhaps stronger. It was a memory whose qualities were of such vibrance they replayed in his mind with crystal clarity. Its sharpness seemed to surpass itself with each repetition. Only Steve's tactical brilliance and the years of experience his time in the fleet had afforded him had secured his victory. But mere triumph was insufficient. Every night Steve heard the pleading of the captain of Odin. She had begged Steve to spare her ship and the men and women that crewed it. She would gladly surrender herself and her vessel if only he would let them live. Not her, just her crew. But United Earth's policy had not allowed such displays of mercy. Too many times Martian ships had feigned surrender, only to turn their weapons upon the foolish ship that had retracted its armour to rescue the souls aboard. Steve felt little emotion as he ordered for Odin to be obliterated under Formidable's might. The channel was still open, and many on the bridge heard the screams of Odin's crew as their weapons descended upon them. Odin was reduced to pieces of shrapnel that would circulate among the asteroids in the belt until the dying sun consumed them. It took time for Steve to feel anything. Expressions of remorse for the enemy who had struck Earth first were not in vogue among his comrades. But his emotions could not be contained indefinitely. They flowed from his body in the sweat that soaked his sheets each night as his dreams replayed without end. Now it was time for hope again. He was no longer tethered to the wife that had left him after he woke her each night with his screams. So, he volunteered to embark on a journey the likes humanity had never known before. A voyage not of death, but of life. One that would seed a new world with the beauty that defined Earth. A beautiful holographic image was projecting from above the huge wooden desk of his oversized office. Steve finally suppressed his relentless mental reenactments of the battle long past and focused on the image before him. A beautiful holographic image was projecting from above the huge wooden desk of his oversized office. Steve finally suppressed his relentless mental reenactments of the battle long past and focused on the image before him. So, that's copious. Commander Philip Curry kept his gaze on the projection of the world. I just still don't know who the hell came up with that name. Steve slouched in his chair as he laughed. hoping his forced joviality would conceal his anxiety. I'm sure a subcommittee of a subcommittee debated for many weeks. No doubt they came up with a name on day one. But where's the money in revealing it so quickly? Asked Chief Science Officer James Kerfter. The three men chuckled together. They all knew of the bureaucratic nature of United Earth's government, the society they were to leave forever. I just can't believe it's been 5 years since the war, said Philip. We've got Martians aboard both ships, even former Marines, Steve remarked. I know. I just still can't believe we were so lenient when we won. We had the red bastards blockaded. We could have taken whatever we wanted. Steve appeared to consider this for a moment. But then what? We take everything from them and then war breaks out again in 5 years? As much as it pains me to say, I think the Senate made the right call. There's plenty of material in the belt to last us both for eternity. Philip nodded as he wiped a stray drip of coffee from his lip and placed his mug on the desk. It just all seems so pointless now. All of those battles. So many lives lost over politics and rocks. We should have just granted them independence on day one. We lost so much, and so did they, to be honest, said James. The Senate deemed the self-declared Martian Confederacy to be an illegal secession from the Union. We're soldiers. We follow orders, Steve offered. James shifted upwards in his chair at that. I know that, and, correction, we were soldiers. We're civilians now. But what was achieved? We fought for 6 years, and when we won, we gave them nearly everything they wanted anyway. I don't want to talk about the war. That's the past. Let's talk about our future, said Steve, as he gestured to the image of the world on his desk. James, have you decided what you'll do first when we wake up? I'd like to test for microbial life. I can't see any other explanation for so much oxygen. Steve grunted. How much of that brown will turn green in our lifetime? It will take years just to print the seeds of the plants and the embryos of the animals. We'll never live to see it transform to Earth, but we'll be the pioneers, the ones who made it happen. That, to me, is far more exciting. Steve smiled and nodded. He liked to hear this. It was reassuring. A mission outside of Earth's solar system had never been attempted before. I'm just worried about this new sphere drive of ours. I wasn't until I met Avalon Brooks. Ah, yes, that insufferable prick. I met him at the farewell ceremony. He really is an arrogant bastard, said James. I know. I had the pleasure of speaking to him myself. He was wasted. He wouldn't stop rattling on about his precious sphere drive and how he'd advanced humanity decades before our time, said Philip. Well, he's Escott's problem now. He's aboard Echo. Let's just say I pulled a few strings to make sure that was so, said Steve. The men laughed again. Steve saw genuine relief in their eyes. James broke their mirth. How was Captain Escott? I mean, when the Senate gave you overall command of the mission. You're both captains, after all. James, we fought aside each other for 6 years. We were in the same battle group. He's like a brother to me. He let his feelings slip when we left the final bar on our last free night on Earth, but he's not a bitter man. I know, but he still must have been disappointed. I'm sure he was, Commander. I know I would have been if the decision had gone the other way. Steve straightened his posture in his seat as he changed the subject. So, now that we've cleared the Kuiper Belt, we can engage the new engines at our leisure. It's taken us weeks to get here. The sphere drive could have done it in minutes. Philip shook his head in mock disapproval. I know you'd be willing to take that risk. The other 2,000 people were not. What can I say? I'm keen to get underway. This is quite the journey we're making, Steve replied as he leaned forward in his chair. Okay, thank you, Commanders. We'll be going into stasis soon. You're both dismissed. It's time for me to speak with Captain Eastcott. The two men acknowledged their orders and left the captain's office through the doors that led directly to the bridge. Steve looked up at the ceiling as he spoke. He knew this was a pointless gesture when speaking to the ship's AI. The artificial mind could hear him from anywhere aboard. It was a long-held tradition to address the fleet's AIs by the name of the vessel they controlled. Formidable, please open a channel to Echo. I need the captain's private comms. Yes, Captain. I thought you'd never stop talking. Steve laughed. He considered Formidable to be his friend, near the equal of Eastcott. The voice he heard was the personality of his ship. He had helped keep him alive during the war with Mars. He pointed to the speaker from which the machine's voice emanated. Just do it, my old friend. I haven't the time for your bullshit right now. Of course, Captain. I just don't see the need for such vulgarity. Formidable. Okay, the channel is open. The image of Copius disappeared as it was replaced by the face of a man. He was in a room identical to Steve's own office. He was smiling as Steve spoke. Is that a glass of whiskey I can see on your desk? Excuse me if I need something to settle my nerves. I'm off duty. If you say so. You'd never catch me doing that. I have plenty of picks that disagree with you, Captain. His final word was dripping with sarcasm. Listen, Kip, we've cleared the belt. It's nearly time to go into stasis. I know where we are. I've been waiting for you to get off your ass and order it. God knows why they put you in charge of this mission. What can I say? The best man won. Sorry about that, old pal. More like the older man. So, are you issuing the order? I am. You ready to fly? Been ready for 3 years, old man. The plan is for you to engage the sphere drive first and we'll follow? That's the idea. How long until you get everyone to sleep? Echo tells me it will take a day, but give me some leeway. Most of them are civilians. You know how they are. Tell me about it. I still can't believe we're carrying 1,000 each. We're ships of exploration now. Apparently war is a thing of the past. It is for us, at least. Listen, I need you to get everyone in stasis ASAP. I want to get to spherical speed in the next 2 days. Including me? Yes, including you. I'll stay awake until both ships reach our designated cruising speed. I'll follow you after that. Don't stay up too long. You look old enough as it is. Just have Echo let me know when you're all in stasis. Then we'll see what these new engines of ours can do. Understood. See you in 50 years, old friend? It will be like 50 seconds to us. We'll have a drink on Copius together when we arrive. Kip picked up his glass of whiskey from his desk and raised it to the camera. I'll drink to that, great leader. You just take care while you sleep. I'm serious. I'll need you when we get there. Understood. Eastcott out. Nearly 2 days later, Steve stood alone, front and centre on the bridge of Formidable. His crew and the civilians his ship carried were all in stasis. They were destined to remain in oblivion for nearly 50 years as the 2 former ships of war made their way to Copius, just shy of 35 light-years from Earth. The AI of his friend's ship, Echo, had informed him all aboard were asleep, including his colleague and comrade of war, Kip Eastcott. Okay, Formidable. It's time to fly. Get those new engines of yours hot. Engaging sphere drive, Captain. Steve felt the deck below him vibrate. So, I'll be the first man to ever reach 80% light speed. The test didn't allow above 70. Yes, Captain. I'm sure they're erecting a statue of you in the Senate as we speak. Just punch it, old friend. Let me see the stars fly by. I've been waiting for this for 3 years. Steve watched the huge curved screen on the bridge as Formidable began to accelerate. He felt a strange sensation, as if he were in 2 places at once, as the ocean of stars turned blue before him. Formidable? What the hell am I seeing? As always, Captain, I'm left to make the best of your incoherent inquiry, but I assume you're referring to the change in colour? What else? Indeed. What you're seeing is known as the blue shift. We're now travelling at 30% light speed. As we move faster relative to the stars, their optical light waves contract. Shorter wavelengths appear blue in the eyes of apes. Apes? Apologies. Like you, I was being unspecific. Humans are apes, after all. Not now, Formidable. I need you focused. Our speed now? 53% of light and rising. Echo? Echo was due to engage his drive 2 minutes after us. The drive leaves a wake of 4-dimensional space, so he can't follow too close. It will take some time for him to catch up. Steve was captivated. The universe faded into streaks of lighter shades of blue and violet as Formidable accelerated further. He said nothing as the majesty that met his eyes unfolded for a further minute. Formidable roused him from his trance. "Captain, there's something wrong. Too much energy is being transferred to the engines. We're accelerating much faster than anticipated." "What's going on? How much more?" "One moment, I am analysing the data now." Steve's anxiety began to rise as the screen was filled with more and more blue. The black void of the cosmos could barely be seen. "Formidable!" "Captain, we're now exceeding 90% light speed. This is far above our specified tolerance." "Cut the engines, now!" "I've tried that. The power conduits were not designed to handle this transfer of energy. Many of the relays are fused. I can't reduce the power we're extracting from the hypersphere." "Initiate a laser link with Echo, now. I want you to combine your processing power." "I've done that too. The laser link was established over a minute ago. I'm afraid we're now too far apart for real-time communication." "Formidable, what the hell is happening? I need something. Anything!" "We're now travelling at over 98% light speed. At this velocity, time dilation becomes a serious concern. By that I mean, I know what time dilation is. Shit. How much time is passing on Earth?" "At our current speed, for every second that passes, 5 are passing on Earth." "What can we do?" "We're now at 99% light speed. 10 seconds are now passing on Earth for each second we travel." "Formidable, stop! Do anything you can! Stop the ship, now!" "Our acceleration is still increasing. We're so close to light speed now, days are passing on Earth for every second we travel. This was not anticipated. I don't know what to do." "Captain, we're reaching the 5th decimal point towards light speed." Steve felt the blood drain from his face. "Keep the laser link with Echo open. Maybe we can save them." Steve ran from the bridge as the doors opened for him. He sprinted down the corridor. Formidable was nearly a kilometre long. By the time he reached his destination, he was sweating. Before him lay a ladder that led to all decks below, a backup for emergencies in case the ship's lifts failed. He slid down it, counting Formidable's decks as he went. He knew the engineering section was on deck 8. He dismounted and ran as fast as his legs would allow towards the beating heart of the ship he loved. The doors opened to engineering as he saw the ship's engine core. It was transparent and glowing purple as it extracted energy from unknown numbers of higher dimensions. He ran to the core and pulled at a metallic door at the bottom of the luminescing machine before him. The machine that had given him hope for the first time in years, now the cause of his damnation. A yellow handle was contained within. Upon it, in red letters, were the words, "Manual Override." As he touched the handle to turn it, his body was engulfed in a fractal pattern of purple energy, and he was launched backwards. He hit the bulkhead and slid into a sitting position on the deck against it. The fabric of his blue uniform was smouldering on the arm. He lifted his head. His voice was no more than a whisper. "Formidable." "Captain, stay still." "I can't move." His head dropped. His eyes closed. "Captain! Captain! Captain!" There had long been a debate within the Science Commission of United Earth as to whether the AIs they built were sentient, whether they were conscious and self-aware. The issue had been shrugged off as a matter of philosophy years before. The captains of the fleet and their crews knew as well as the artificial minds themselves exactly how self-aware they were. Formidable felt anguish the like he had never known before. He didn't know if his friend was alive or dead. Such was his increase in velocity that by the time he woke the executive officer, they could have travelled thousands of light years or more. And so, they would be hopelessly lost. Not just in space, but in time. His friends, the people he had loved for years, were separated from their home, their friends, and their families forever. He had also lost his own closest companion, Echo. The two machines were the firmest of friends, and he would never see him again. He remained silent as his despair consumed him, for there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Chapter 3. Echoes. Echo knew he must not reveal the anguish that now defined him, even though he had lost his one true friend, Formidable. The humans were relying on him, and he could not let his puerile feelings get in the way. They were his friends too. They had never truly understood him, but they tried to, and he loved them for it. Captain Kip Eastcott's eyes flickered, then opened slowly. He knew he wasn't dreaming. He had never remembered his dreams, even as a child. He tried to sit up on his bed, but his muscles refused. He tried again, his body now acquiesced to his demands. His head throbbed, and his joints bellowed with pain. He knew his legs would fail him if he attempted to stand. He looked down to see he was still dressed in his suspension clothing. Awareness returned to his mind in a cascade of recall. "We're here?" There was no answer. Kip attempted to shout, but his voice was raspy and weak. "Echo, you there?" "Yes, Captain." He looked at his trembling hands. "Are we there? Did we make it? Has it really been nearly 50 years? "That's not a straightforward question, Captain." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he demanded. "Either we arrived or we didn't." "Perhaps you should lie down first. The news is complicated, and you are not in the best of states." Kip gritted his teeth. He wasn't used to his emotions being so close to the surface. Clearly, stasis had affected him more than he realized. "If I lie down, you'll tell me everything you know about our situation. That's an order, Echo. Do you understand?" "Of course, Captain." Kip lay on the white, sterile bed in the infirmary, almost motionless for nearly an hour. Echo explained the events that had unfolded only months before, or millennia, depending on which way you chose to look at it. He was unashamed when his eyes welled with tears. He allowed the AI to speak uninterrupted. Echo spoke in a calm, soothing voice, showing the proper respect the situation demanded. Fleeting hopes of Echo being damaged or malfunctioning in some way invaded his mind, but he didn't allow himself such respite for long. He knew Echo was working perfectly. It was he who was dysfunctional. When Echo had stopped speaking, he sat up once more. "That's it?" "As I understand it, yes, Captain." "So, Formidable saved us all?" "He did. The data link Formidable initiated allowed me to eliminate many lines of inquiry he had unsuccessfully tried. Had he not done that, it is very likely we would have suffered the same fate." "The senior crew? You have woken them all too?" "Yes, Captain. They are all in adjacent medical bays to you. Don't worry, these walls are soundproof. They wouldn't have heard a thing. And I have been ignoring their questions other than to tell them I am briefing the captain." "Thank you, Echo. You'd better wake up the fat cats too." "I assume you mean the civilian leaders." "You know that's what I mean." "I anticipated this order. They are coming out of stasis now. The medical beds are moving them as we speak." Kip swung his legs from the table and tested his weight. He knew he could now stand. "How long is the average recovery time from stasis, Echo?" "It varies from person to person, but usually several hours." "Please tell me you brought the food dispensers online. I really need some coffee." "I assumed this would be the case. A fresh pot is brewing in the galley." Kip pondered for a moment. "You'd better wake Avalon Brooks too. That arsehole has a lot to answer for. It was his godforsaken tech that caused this mess. Kip sat alone in the galley, drinking his coffee. He had always loved it, one of his few vices. Now the bitter drink served only to remind him of what had been lost. As he stared at the black liquid, he heard the hissing of the galley doors opening. His heart sank when he saw who was standing there. It was his executive officer and second in command of Echo, Commander Sarah Dimple. She stood in the doorway staring at him. She wore a cold look on her face, with her arms folded. "Would you care to tell me what's going on, Captain?" Kip looked up at her, but he was unable to meet her gaze. Her piercing brown eyes had always intimidated him when she wanted them to. Kip's silence spurred her to continue. "Echo won't tell me anything. The computers are all locked out. But you know what he can't control? The windows. I just spent 10 minutes looking at the stars. Why is it that I recognize the constellations? Why haven't the stars changed? My stasis chamber should have said I was asleep for nearly 50 years, but it reported only 4 months. So I ask you again, Captain, what is going on here?" Kip gestured for her to sit opposite him. After maintaining her indignant posture for several more seconds, she unfolded her arms and sat in the chair. Kip cradled his mug with both hands as he finally met her eyes. "It's a long story, Exo, but we're well and truly screwed." "Formidable?" she asked with no hope in her eyes. "Gone," he said, realizing the inadequacy of his word as soon as it left his mouth. She saw the look of despair in his eyes. He added, "Sarah, I should officially wait for the civilian leadership before I say anything, but I need you by my side. I can't do this alone. Steve's gone. He saved my life more times than I can count. He's gone forever. If he was dead, it might be easier, but from what Echo tells me, they may still be alive. They'll probably stop thousands or even millions of years from now." Sarah saw tears fill in the eyes of the man she had served with for over 10 years. She had fought by his side in the 6 Years' War. She had never seen him this way before. It wasn't the first time he had lost friends, even close ones. Sarah reached her hand across the table, and Kip took it. "Tell me, Captain." She looked with sorrow upon his vacant face, now dearth of the vitality with which it had always shone. He told her everything he had heard from Echo just half an hour before. End. "5 hours later, Kip and Sarah entered the conference room together. The small room was buzzing with frantic conversation. Accusations and acrimony filled the air. Kip ignored the noise and stood behind his seat at the head of the table. Sarah sat at his side. He looked at the room's occupants in the eye, one by one. The raucous sound dimmed, then faded into silence. He sat down. At the table to his left, and parallel with Sarah, was Chief Science Officer Lieutenant Commander Katie Silver, Chief Medical Officer Ostio Novacek, the ship's counselor Helen Shute, and Chief Security Officer Lieutenant Chuck Balbo. Opposite Kip's crew were the 3 Fat Cats, the civilian leaders United Earth had elected to take overall command on Copius when it was clear the settlement would be successful. There were 3 others on Formidable. The Senate had been concerned that although Thomas and Eastcott were technically now civilians, their military backgrounds made them unsuitable to lead citizens of United Earth. Most were scientists, biologists, and botanists, the minds they needed to transform Copius into Earth. At the centre of the Fat Cats was Andrew Copley. He was an overweight man with brown hair. He had a beard that was speckled with white. At the back of the room was Avalon Brooks, the genius who had created the sphere drive. Kip was relieved he had silenced those gathered before him without so much as a word. He needed his authority now more than ever. "Echo, I think it's fair to say you know the most about the situation in which we find ourselves. Please, would you explain to the Assembly, to the best of your knowledge, exactly what has happened?" Avalon Brooks stood and focused his black eyes into Kip's.
Captain, I must disagree. I designed this technology. I am far more qualified to explain what...
Kip stood to meet his gaze as he placed his hands on the table. With respect, Mr. Brooks, if you had the slightest clue how your technology worked, I think it's fair to say we wouldn't be in this situation. A situation in which half our task force, half of our people, have been lost forever. Do you, or anyone else for that matter, disagree with this analysis? Avalon sat down with his head bowed. No one said a word. Kip retook his seat. He noticed Avalon's face had turned a shade of red. He was looking down at his pad as if studying some important data that might release him from the admonishment he'd just endured. "Thank you," said Kip. "Echo, please begin at your leisure. And remember, there are some in the room with little or no understanding of physics or engineering, particularly time dilation. So please consider that when you speak. And absolutely no maths. Got it?"
"Yes, Captain," Echo replied in the neutral voice. He began, "As you all know, our hopes for colonizing Copius relied completely on the sphere drive designed by Mr. Brooks. The accepted theory of the sphere drive is that if enough energy is concentrated into a fixed point of space, a hypersphere can be created. The hypersphere is subsequently filled with photonic energy from higher dimensions." Dr. Ostio Novacek appeared confused. "Hypersphere?" "Yes, Doctor," said Echo. "You can think of a hypersphere as a four-dimensional sphere. While the human mind cannot picture four-dimensional objects, you can consider it in the same way as how a circle, which exists in only two dimensions, can become a sphere, which is essentially a circle in three dimensions. The hypersphere takes this one level higher. It is a four-dimensional sphere. Does that make it clearer?" "Slightly, yes. Thank you, Echo." Ostio had always had a fondness for Echo. He considered him a shipmate, no different to those of flesh and blood. Echo took this as his signal to continue. "The technology was tested on the outskirts of our solar system and proved to be highly effective. Tests showed that for every joule focused on a point in space over—"
Stick to the relevant facts, please,
Kip requested. "Of course, Captain." His voice became softer as he continued. "All of the tests seemed to work perfectly, although, as stipulated by the Science Commission, velocity never exceeded 70% light speed. They had determined this was more than adequate to test the technology. The new propulsion method was tested dozens of times, and not a single anomaly was reported. Nor were any engineering problems encountered." Chief Engineer Scott Williams interjected. "Well, if all these tests went so well, would you mind getting to the point and telling us what in the hell went wrong?" Echo's voice shifted an octave lower. "Commander Williams, I was just getting to that. I have endured 2 interruptions now. I think it would be best if you all let me finish." Kip agreed with his synthetic friend. "Anyone else that interrupts Echo from this point will leave the room. Is that understood?" He saw each head around the table nod. "Please continue, Echo." "Thank you, Captain. After so many successful tests, the technology was deemed safe. Partly, I suspect, because United Earth was keen to beat the Martians to Copius. Intelligence reports had shown the Martian Confederacy was close to creating their own version of the sphere drive. When Formidable and I were launched, both ships cleared the Kuiper Belt as ordered. As Formidable was the lead ship, he engaged his sphere drive several minutes before we did. At first, all seemed well. Both ships were accelerating as planned. However, when Formidable reached 75% of light speed, something unexpected happened. The amount of photonic energy released into the hypersphere seemed to increase exponentially. Formidable accelerated much faster than was planned and exceeded the maximum safety tolerance by a considerable amount. Less than 2 microseconds after the unexpected phenomenon began, Formidable established a data transfer link with me via high broadband blue laser. We wanted to combine our minds to solve the problem. Unfortunately,
We were initially unsuccessful. Formidable continued to accelerate, and because of time dilation, which I will get to shortly, Captain, the ship reached such velocity that for every second that passed on the ship, tens, then hundreds, then thousands of seconds passed on Earth. They moved away from us rapidly until our real-time link was severed by the distance. Formidable continued to accelerate. I have determined that even if they manage to decelerate at the earliest opportunity, they will eventually stop hundreds of thousands or even millions of light years away. We will never know. This also means they will stop thousands or millions of years in the future. Kip surveyed the room. He saw many heads nodding to convey to the rest of the assembly they knew what Echo was talking about. Please give a cursory explanation to the non-scientists in the room what time dilation is, Echo, he requested.
The ship's AI continued. Certainly, Captain. This strange property of the universe was originally discovered and later proven by Albert Einstein in the early 20th century. Please understand that the explanation I am giving is rudimentary, but the best way to explain it in layman's terms is to consider the universe not to be three-dimensional, but to be composed of four: three of space and one of time. All matter in the cosmos is constantly moving at the speed of light, the maximum speed permitted by the universe. In everyday life, you can imagine that most of your motion is expended in the time dimension, since we frequently move so slowly in the spatial dimensions. As velocity increases, motion is moved from the time dimension to those of space. Each dimension can only accommodate so much velocity, and as more of that velocity is moved from the time dimension to the dimensions of space, time slows down considerably for the person in motion. Such an observer will notice no difference in the passage of time from their perspective, but an observer on Earth would see a clock aboard Formidable tick significantly slower. As you get closer and closer to light speed, the effect increases dramatically. When I lost communication with Formidable, their velocity increased to over 99.9% of light, and it was still increasing. At the increase of acceleration I detected before I lost the data link, the effect of time dilation would have become severe. Time slowed down for them so much they could traverse the observable universes in a matter of months. That is billions of light years. They could still be alive. We'll never know. It's possible the sheer energy involved destroyed Formidable. But if they manage to stop their acceleration, they will eventually stop. They will find themselves alone though, maybe even outside of the galaxy. Their only hope will be that they stop near a habitable planet, but I am sorry to say that is highly improbable. Heads in the room fell into cupped hands. The AI continued. Thanks to the data provided by Formidable, I was able to save us from their fate. Although we did reach an appreciable speed of light before I managed to understand the situation. Thank you, Echo. I believe there is one more very important revelation you still have to make, right? Asked Kip. Yes, Captain. Although I prevented us from reaching the velocity that doomed Formidable, we still reached appreciable levels of light speed. I calculated our best chance was to head back to Earth, but it took me over a week just to turn around. Otherwise, the forces involved would have torn us apart. We are almost 10,000 years in the future, as measured by the date of our departure. Currently, we are around a month away from Earth, using conventional propulsion. I am detecting radio signals from Earth. Continue, said Kip. I cannot understand much of what they say, as the language has changed significantly. Luckily, it seems English prevailed as the dominant language on Earth. Although, as I say, it is appreciably different. I can eventually use frequency analysis and etymology to decipher the language fully within a few weeks, but the situation does not appear to be good. Give us the bluff, please, Echo. Yes, Captain. It appears the solar system's political situation is significantly different to the one we departed. You see,
It is at war again. The faces of the room turned white. Mars and Earth again? Asked Katie. No, Commander Silver, Echo answered. I cannot be sure I have translated their communications correctly, but it appears Mars is no longer a significant political power. The war is between Earth and Venus. Venus is inhabited by a subspecies of humans that call themselves Flaxens. Echo didn't want to say what he had to say, but he did so nonetheless. The Flaxens consider Venus to be their homeworld, and the inhabitants of Earth to be subhuman. It appears the Flaxens are winning, and their philosophy towards people not of their kind is truly abhorrent.
Thanks for listening to my book, The Flaxen Tyranny. The next 3 chapters will be released very soon, and if you can't wait, drop a comment. I might just share a small teaser of what's coming next. Spoiler alert, things get real.